In the world of Euphoria, a series saturated with chaotic spirals and explosive crises, Lexi Howard exists in a quiet corner, often observing more than participating. To the casual viewer, she might seem like a background character, the normal one in a sea of extreme personalities. Yet, it is within this very normality that Lexi's profound and deeply relatable struggle unfolds, the psychological burden of being the good sister, the stable friend, the reliable one. This role, while praised by the outside world, becomes an invisible cage, a complex web of expectations and repressed emotions that slowly chips away at her sense of self. Lexi lives in the constant shadow of her older sister, Cassie, whose life is a dramatic opera of romantic entanglements, heartbreaks, and very public breakdowns. From a young age, Lexi learned that the family ecosystem could not sustain two hurricanes. If Cassie was the storm, Lexi had to be the calm harbor. Their mother, often overwhelmed and seeking solace in her own ways, unconsciously reinforced this dynamic. Lexi witnessed Cassie's struggles receiving immediate attention and energy, while her own quiet achievements, good grades, sensible behavior, simply not causing trouble, were met with a grateful pat on the head, a sigh of relief, but rarely the same intensity of focus. This teaches a dangerous lesson, that stability is her value, her currency for love, and that neediness or personal crisis would be an inconvenient burden on a system already stretched thin. This good sister complex extends far beyond her family home and into every facet of Lexi's life. She is the perpetual observer, the friend who holds everyone's hair back, listens to their problems, and offers gentle, sensible advice. She is Rue's childhood friend who watches her spiral into addiction with a heartbroken but patient concern. She is there for Maddie, offering a safe space amidst toxic relationships. She is even there for Cassie, providing a shoulder to cry on after every romantic disaster she herself helped engineer. In this role, Lexi becomes her emotional vault for others, but the vault has no key for her own release. Her feelings, her anxieties, her own burgeoning desires and confusions about identity, sexuality, and purpose are constantly shelved, deemed less urgent, less important than the emergencies unfolding around her. The psychological burden here is one of emotional labor and profound loneliness. Being the stable one means you are seen as inherently okay, as having your life together, which ironically makes it harder to ever ask for help. How do you suddenly say you are drowning when everyone relies on you to be the lifeguard? This creates a silent isolation, a feeling of being fundamentally different or separate from those you care for, because your perceived stability sets you apart. The pressure of this role inevitably leads to a crisis of identity. When you spend your entire life moderating your emotions to provide comfort for others, a natural question arises: who are you when no one needs you to be strong? Lexi's sense of self is so intertwined with being the sensible, reliable observer that her own desires become foggy and undefined. We see her tentative crush on Fezco, a kind and surprisingly gentle drug dealer, as a flicker of her own wants breaking through the surface. But even this is approached with caution, from the sidelines. Her internal world is rich and vivid, filled with sharp observations and a creative wit. But it remains locked inside, narrated in voiceover but rarely expressed to the people around her. This repression is not without consequence. The tension between the quiet, good girl she is expected to be and the passionate, observant, and sometimes rightfully angry young woman bubbling underneath builds like steam in a kettle. The culmination of this pressure is her play, a moment of seismic rebellion disguised as a school project. This is Lexi's desperate, brilliant, and psychologically necessary attempt to flip the script. By writing and directing a raw, often brutally honest portrayal of her friends' and sisters' lives, she does several crucial things. She moves from the observer to the author, from the background to the center stage. She finally voices her perceptions, her judgments, and her pain. The play is not a malicious act, but a scream of identity. It says, I see everything, I have felt everything you've all put me through, and my story, my perspective, matters too. It is her way of externalizing the internal vault, of showing the weight she has been carrying. Of course, this explosion of repressed self has dramatic fallout, most notably with Cassie. Cassie's violent reaction to seeing her own life and her own pain reflected back at her through Lexi's lens is a classic eruption of the dysfunctional sibling dynamic. The good sister is no longer playing her part, she has broken the unspoken contract by asserting her own narrative, which challenges Cassie's perceived monopoly on trauma and attention. For Lexi, however painful the backlash, this conflict is a necessary step towards psychological liberation. She is finally being seen, not for her stability, but for her complexity, for her anger, her artistic vision, and her own capacity to cause waves. It is the beginning of her shedding the good sister label and integrating the full, messy spectrum of her humanity. In the end, Lexi Howard's story is a powerful exploration of a subtle but widespread form of pain. It speaks to anyone who has ever been the reliable friend, the peacemaker in the family, the one who has it all together. It reveals the silent tax this role extracts, the delayed development of one's own identity, the loneliness of perceived strength, and the quiet resentment that can fester when your own needs are perpetually sidelined. Her journey teaches us that stability should not be a prison. Being a good person does not mean being a silent one, and that true health comes not from endlessly supporting the chaos of others, but from having the courage to finally, and messily, claim your own space, your own voice, and your own right to sometimes, just sometimes, fall apart. Lexi's path is about learning that she can be both the anchor and the ship, that she can be strong for others and, more importantly, vulnerable for herself, and that her story is every bit as valid, compelling, and worthy of attention as the louder, more dramatic ones that have always surrounded her.